So anyway, when I came to Ohio State back before y'all were born, we had 4 campuses where we had ministries: Ohio State, Alabama, Indiana, and Minnesota. We were just, trying it out, see how it would work. And of course, Carl's at a meeting now down in Xenia. A lot of you know Carl, who directs the ministry here. And now there's Athletes in Action presence on 229 college campuses. And I guess playing off of what Steve said, and how he had confidence in God, not all the time, obviously, all of us, fall away from that, but how he trusted at some point. He trusted himself. He knew he could accomplish it. You're going to be coming up against these different obstacles. And, I just want to tell you, there's a bunch of stories, but I want to tell you one that happened here back when I was by myself working Athletes in Action on this campus. And I had a chance there were a wrestler, a heavyweight wrestler. His last name was Moxley. And you know him?
Yeah.
You know Mox? Which one?
Don?
Don, yeah, Don. And I had a chance to share the gospel with him. He responded really well. And then he had another brother, the older one. He's a veterinarian right now. And they were all big heavyweight champs. Don was a Big Ten champ. And they were state champs. Then he had a younger one who was 6'7". So there was like the long one, the wide one, and then there was a skinnier one. But this one was 6'7", over 300 pounds. We're talking in the 90s, early 90s. And then they had their dad. They owned this land out in Zanesville. It was recaptured coal mining land where they grazed cattle on top of this land. Because I got to know the family really well. And all 3 boys would come to Bible study, but Dad kept saying to me, his name was Wendell, and he was a lot of fun. We actually brought these cattle in on feet. So you can imagine 3 heavyweight wrestlers chasing cattle. And one of them was a lineman at Ohio State, an offensive lineman, the 6'7" one. And, but the dad kept saying, hey, Jim, I'm not ready. He goes, I'm not ready for this, give him my life. And I kept thinking, well, when are you going to be ready? Anyway, all 3 boys were ready, but he just wasn't ready. And then one day, things weren't kind of tight security-wise as they are now since 9/11. But Ohio State was playing Michigan, up in Michigan. And I had gone up and done the chapel, and then I came back home and I'm watching the game on TV. And lo and behold, they stopped the game on TV. Because what had happened was, Wendell Moxley, the dad, who was a lot of fun, this guy was crazy fun, he sneaks down onto the field and he's leading the Ohio State band from the field. And flat out, he just has a heart attack right there and falls over flat on the field. And they stopped the game on national TV and life flighted him out of there. And he straight lined on the helicopter and he died, basically. So he had this out-of-body experience, but they brought him back to life. He woke up in Riverside Hospital. Didn't make it to university, but helicopter brought him to Riverside Hospital. He eventually wakes up and his son calls me and says, you got to get down here. When my dad woke up, he said, I want to talk to Jim Schmidtke. So I went down there, and he had already given his life to Christ. So in my mind, it's like, he was ready. But look what it did to get him ready. And you're thinking about your life in the future, and I am telling you that I could just go through a number of stories of how fast life is. There was a football player that I was supposed to meet with back in the 90s. This guy was heading for the NFL. I mean, he was top notch. He goes out drinking one night. He's in a club over here with 2 other guys. One of them you know from TV, O.B. Stillwell. He wears the what do you call those little ties? Bow tie. Is that what it's called? Bow tie? He wears the bow tie, so he does interviews, and he's in the locker room doing interviews. Jerry, you've probably seen him. Anyway, so they go and they're clubbing, and they're in the wrong place. But as they're leaving the club, some guys saw they were football players. They started to pick a fight, maybe, drink a little bit of courage and pick a fight with them. But these guys did the right thing. They started walking away. But one of these gang members pulls a gun and shoots Obi in the back. And the bullet goes right in here. And so Jason, the other guy, the defensive tackle, carries him to his car and starts driving him to Riverside, to University. The police stop him, put Obi in a ambulance. And Jason just driving along, but he had a little bit to drink. Runs the light at Olentangy and Lane Avenue. And broadside is dead. Jason dead. And so I get the call at 5 in the morning, and I come down, and it was just me and Obi's mom in the hospital, just laying hands on Obi. Lord, please don't let him die. Please heal him and use him. And his mom right there commits him to Christ, that he would be committed. And you know what? The doctor comes in later and he says, I don't know what happened here. This bullet entered his body and curved around a vital organ. And he lived. He played football again. He started as a linebacker here. And now he runs a successful real estate business in Columbus, but he also does the commentary. My point is, life is just a moment between two eternities. And that's just some of the stories. I could go through a lot of them. The older you get, the more you stories you have. And I know have you lost, anybody in this room, who has lost somebody to death? You've experienced it? Yeah. So you know about it. So with that life being that short, we got to take it and say, God, what do you want to do with me? And you might be thinking, I know because you're here, you're in this, being in this room makes you a potential leader. Just the fact that you made it to this room, and you heard Steve's talk and his challenge on how he did that, makes you a potential leader. And I have no idea which one of you, I'm going to use my old Pittsburgh vernacular a bit, which one of you are going to be great leaders. But I do know this, those of you that choose to give, to serve, that God will use you. God will use you in a mighty way. And so I'm going to say life is just a moment between two eternities. So how are you going to spend your moment? Now let me tell you, when you do like what Steve did, and you become the best at your sport as you can, like when I talk to the other athletes, they know this is something that Steve's in. And because he works so hard, they're more likely to listen to me, to what I have to share. And I always tell it to you, that if you become the best in your sport that you can be, or if you're a manager, or if you're in business, or if you're a carpenter, like for me, for example, I'm a carpenter, I'm a rough carpenter, and so when you're a rough carpenter, you got to dig post holes, right? And we didn't always have those augers that, do it automatically, so use this post hole, and I hate post holes. Like when I built the deck on my house, I had to dig 16 post holes. And in Ohio, you hit clay about that deep, and it really gets hard. What I discovered is, if I dig that post hole and I experience God in the digging of the hole, two things happen. One is, I don't hate it as much. The second thing is, I dig better post holes because I'm experiencing God in the midst of it. And so whatever you're encountering today, you can experience God in the midst of it. You might have a setback. Okay, let me tell you, I'm going to tell you another just quick story. I'm not going to drag us out or anything, but we had a guy on the Columbus crew several years ago, probably about 10. And I'll tell you, the crew they were headed for the playoffs. This dude was a midfielder, to me, one of the best midfielders in the league. He had a hat trick. Like the week before this happened, and then after the hat trick, a week later, he gets a concussion. His 7th concussion in 3 years. So he had to make a decision. He had 2 kids. He decided he had to end his career. Ross Polly was his name. And we were praying about this, and I'm like, my Lord, why? Listen to what he did when he left here. He went to Memphis. He started a club, built it to 1,000 people, 1,000 kids. He's influencing those kids for Christ. But he calls me one day, and I was actually at the Crew Stadium, and he says, hey, Jim, can you give me all the interviews from your DVD, the prize DVD? We do this international DVD that we use during the World Cup. So we sent him the transcripts from all of our DVDs. He puts together a New Testament, puts these stories of these different players in there, Brazil, U.S., Brazil, Germany, Africa, just different, and he made 600,000 of these in Hindi that he sent to India. 600,000. Then he made 200,000 in Arabic. I'm like, how Ross, he was the shyest guy on this team, tough competitor, but shy. 200,000 in Hindi, 100,000 in English, and I had 1,000 in my trunk. I'm down to 200. So, or actually, I think I'm down to 24. So somebody can have this. Is there somebody who wants this? Who Where's our soccer player over there? Yeah. Then one last story. And I'm going to give this book away too. Practice of the Presence of God. There's a dude in the 17th century. And he's working for the King of France. And he's a counselor within the financial element. And he's getting sick of it. He says, I'm going to go be deeply spiritual. I'm going to join the monastery. Because that's what you do in the 1700s. You join the monastery to become spiritual, right? Anyway, I've stayed in the monastery. Aren't that cool? But in Germany. So he gets to the monastery, and they make him the pot washer. Okay, your job's a pot washer. I'm going to be spiritual. Now you wash pots. He washed pots for 9 years. But he experienced God in the washing of the pots. And he became the best pot washer imaginable. Then after 9 years, they make him the cobbler. You take care of the shoes. Their shoes weren't Nikes. They were just, pretty rough shoes. So he fixed his shoes. But he experienced God in the midst of it. He became the best. And you know what? We're reading his book 300 years later. We're not reading their book. Let's see. Whose birthday is today to get this book? Anybody? Close? Who's the closest to today?
August.
Right there? I don't know. You want it anyway. You're supposed to read it. It's Providence. So my challenge for you in closing is this. And I know they're going to do a little bit of sharing. But think about your life. And whatever's holding you back. And you might think, I'm not a leader. I'm just not that kind of person. Well, you got to start practicing now being a leader in your team. Because some of you affects other people who translate that. Like, for example, if I could have walked in that bar with Obi and those guys, I'm not saying he wouldn't have been shot, but I might have got him out of there earlier. I might have, because at any given time, there's 10% of people on that team who could end up breaking a law tonight. But just you be that person. You be that go-to person. And, I was in Hong Kong, and there was this guy, or we went to this church, the ceilings were like this high, and after church, they're like, okay, now you gotta go out in the street and talk to people. I was with a basketball team, and they said, go out in the street, just talk to people in the streets. That's what we do here in Hong Kong. So we go out, and I'm with a basketball player, and we're talking to this guy. It turns out he's an atheist. He's a chemist. He was just back home in the inner city visiting somebody. And while we're talking, I'm talking to him about, evidence for the faith, and we're just having a good conversation. This guy comes walking over to us, and he was kind of bent over and drooling a little bit, and he couldn't talk perfect, so he writes, and we got scared. I mean, all of a sudden we're like, whoa. But then I realized what he was doing. He was trying to talk to us about Jesus. And so all of a sudden, it's me. His name was Mr. Kong. I never thought of that. And me and Mr. Kong working on the chemist. We ate this together. Mr. Kong, you wouldn't say this dude's a leader. No, Mr. Kong leads 9 basketball players back to his church. Me and these other basketball players. Mr. Kong was using what he had. So that's my challenge for you. What do you got? Are you going to invest it? Because your life's an investment. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. You got all this stuff in the background. You got to let it go. You got to just pursue it, like Stephen. Believe that you can be this person through His power. So we'll close with that. Turn it back over to everybody, and see you guys later.